Hello and welcome to Trucking Office Live. I'm Alan Campbell with Trucking Office, and we are going to take a look at our daily recap of what's going on in our mock-up trucking business. So each day what we do is we jump on and we take a look at what it takes to enter a few loads and manage a few trucks. A small trucking company would say 2 or 3 trucks. And we work in different examples. Every day in the trucking office, or in the trucking business, I should say, everything's the same but different, right? I mean, every day we're hauling freight, but every day it's a different place. I mean, you could be on dedicated freight, but for the most part, there's a lot of different scenarios out there. Everybody's doing a little something different. So with that being said, let's take a look at the software. Let me get my screen share going here. Okay. And this is where we're at for today. Today's Monday, just November already. Last week, we had a couple loads going in the system already. So what we're looking at on the screen here is a list of our trips. Here at the top, I'm pointing to this trips tab here. And then, so the first line is highlighted in yellow because it's delivered in the future. So it's delivering tomorrow, basically. We went from Canton, Ohio to Houston, Texas. So we can check in with that driver. Basically, he's on the road and he's expected to deliver tomorrow. The next load was truck number 2 that was going from Chicago, Ohio to Akron, Ohio. And so he's delivered in Akron today. And we have this driver running a dedicated lane, just back and forth and back and forth. And so I'll show you how to just clone those trips since they're the same every time. And it's really easy to just clone that and go on. And then the other truck we have going is from Canton, Ohio to Los Angeles, California. And that load's been on the road for about a week, and today is the day that they were delivering out there in Los Angeles. I actually have myself on that load, but I'm not really in Los Angeles. I'm here in Ohio. Anyways, let's go ahead with that one first. That load would have delivered today, and we'll say that load's all done and delivered. And so we have if we go to our loads view, rather than the trips view, we can then see our statuses. If you look here at this column, you'll see that we have these statuses. Once the loads are assigned to a trip, they're dispatched. Then when they're delivered, the driver updates the status in his ELD mobile app. Then once that's updated as delivered, and then we know we're ready to invoice this. Now the driver can also upload his BOL right through the mobile app, and then we would have the BOL here also. That way we'd be ready to send the invoice via email and attach the BOL right to it. We wouldn't have to text it or email it or do any of these things. It would be right in the app. He would take the picture with his phone inside the Trucking Office app. As soon as he did that and clicked on the upload button, it would just show up right here in our invoicing system. We wouldn't have to do anything additional to it. It just happens automatically. So that's pretty handy. So what we're going to do is this load from Canton to Los Angeles. We'll go ahead and click the view button. We'll take a look at this trip, or this load rather. We'll make sure all the details are there that we needed. We have all our rating information right here. If we need to make any final edits before we invoice, now's the time to do that. But we're just going to go ahead and say everything in there looks good. So we'll just click on the Create Invoice button. When we do that, the system automatically creates a number. If you need a custom number for some reason, no problem, put it in. We're going to go ahead with today's date. If we wanted to enter in a remit to, this is used for things like factoring and things like that. If you have a remit to that's different than your company, then you can put that in right there. You can create a new one. You can, if you have one in there you use all the time, you can just search for it and put it in there. Pretty easy. We already have our load checked off, so we're going to make an invoice just for this one load, and then we'll just create the invoice. Very easy. So then the invoice is created. Right here we have invoice was successfully created. We have 2 versions of the PDF. This is all the invoice information. If we wanted to send it over to the customer, we just click the send via email. We have the customer's email address in there. We can attach a file, that bill of lading like we talked about. Maybe there's a rate con if you're hauling for a broker, or a load tender. A lot of different things you might need to attach to this email and then send it off. You can also click on, send it to me too is one of the features a lot of people like, because then you get a copy of it in your inbox and they get a copy in their inbox, and everybody's on the same page. So with that, we'll come back to our loads, and now this one's invoiced now. You can see where the status changed. It did say delivered, now it says invoiced. If we go back to our invoice list, we can now see that that load was invoiced today on November 2nd. So everything's good to go there. And then we come back to our trips. And then the other one was the load from Chicago back to Akron. And that load was delivering today also. So we'll say that load's all done and ready to be invoiced too. So we'll do the same thing there. We'll go to the load, go to this load from Canton to Akron. We'll view it, proofread it, make sure everything's in there. We got our rates in there. The from and to addresses are in there. Everything's looks good. So we're going to go ahead and create the invoice. We just went over all this stuff, so we understand that. We'll leave today's date. We'll leave the system invoice number. This load is the one that's checked. Right here's the load that's going to be on the invoice. Create the invoice. Just like that, it's done. There's the finished invoice. If we want to send via email, we can just fire it off, attach our files, hit the send, and boom. Just like that, we just invoiced 2 loads when we're done with them. Go back to the invoice list. We can see that one on our list now. Also November 2nd. That one's all done too. Now, once payments start coming in for some of these invoices, we'll enter some payments. We'll cover that on a different day when we'll wait till they're at least a couple weeks old, and we'll start entering some payments occasionally too. Then we'll come back to our trips area. Now, actually, I wanted to go to the loads list because what I'm going to do is this driver that's doing the Chicago to Akron, okay, we have Bill Smith that's doing the dedicated lane. So he does Chicago to Akron, and then before that, he did Akron to Chicago. So what we're going to do is he's going to do that Akron to Chicago again. He's just on a dedicated run going back and forth, so it's the same all the time. So today is Monday the 2nd, and so what we're going to do is we're going to hit this clone button. And when we hit this clone button, it'll automatically create all the planned load information. So everything's already pre-filled. So we have the customer info, we have the shipper info, the consignee where the load delivers, we have the rate, everything's all filled in there. Actually, the weight's filled in, the BOL, everything. So then what we want to do is just change the dates, because now we're going to pick this up on today, which is November 2nd. So we'll toggle over here and we'll say November 2nd. And this particular load actually has 2 pickups, one here in Akron, and then it has another one down here in Canton. So we need to change the date on that one also. Switch from October to November, click the 2nd. Bill lading number might be different. I don't know, just make up some numbers here. And then the delivery date, instead of it'll be tomorrow. This is just an overnight trip. So we're going to say he'll be over there tomorrow in Chicago delivering that one. And then the rate's the same. Maybe we have a contract on this or whatever. We're just cloning it. Everything else is the same. All we did is just change the, maybe the weight's a little different on this one. Maybe this one's only 43,500. I don't, just can update a couple of the details that might change and then just save it. And then there we go. That's all saved in here now. I'm in the load planner, and this is a planned load, so it just saves all the information we just entered. The next step then is to dispatch it by adding it to a trip. So after we have cloned the load, we've made a new load in the load planner. Now we're going to assign the load to the driver by dispatching it on a trip. So when we do that, we'll just assign it to Bill Smith. He's the same guy. The system already knows what truck he's driving, already knows the previous trip with the previous location. Okay. Actually, that's not the right driver, is it? Bill Smith is showing Houston, Texas. Bill Smith. John Doe is in Houston, Texas. We need Bill Smith. Previous location, Akron. Okay, so let's go back to the load planner. Here's our load. Then we're going to add that to the trip. And we will pick Bill Smith. Okay, we had Bill Smith for some reason was in the wrong truck. He's driving truck number 2, and he was in Akron, Ohio. And then we'll have to check that load off. We fixed that. We caught that error. We fixed that real quick. And then we're going to be here taking the load out to Chicago, Illinois for tomorrow. We're not going to enter any extra details. We're just going to assign the load. And then it says trip needs route clarification. That's because there's 2 pickups on the same day. So we're going to say they're in the correct order this time and just save it. Okay, so now successfully created. Now, when that trip was just created, the system did a whole bunch of things. It went through and calculated what the rate was, if there was any calculations there. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom just to show you. The system automatically ran the miles, and it ran the miles per state. How many miles we'll drive in each state. We're using PC Miler set on practical truck routing miles. So this doesn't go shortest distance. This is truck routing, and it pulls the miles. Now, it also updated the driver settlement, what the driver pay is. This is the routing for the trip. Okay, it's doing all these things at the same time. It's setting up the invoice summary. This side over here is the load details. It'll be used for invoicing later. This is the settlement details. This is what basically the driver's pay section. This is a profit and loss area for what's going to be happening with this load. And then at the top is just your trip summary information. Now, sometimes I have customers tell me, geez, Alan, I usually just use a spreadsheet just to keep track of my loads. But you know what? Spreadsheets can't do all the stuff that we're doing here. Some people say, well, why wouldn't I just use QuickBooks? QuickBooks also does not integrate with PC Miler. Every time you enter some basic load information, where you pick up, where you deliver to, they can't do all these calculations that we're doing, with miles and all that kind of stuff. Now, if you have a spreadsheet and you basically put the miles in, okay, you can make it do some math, but you're not going to have a breakdown of how many miles in each state with truck routing and automatically create an invoice without redoing that. The spreadsheet's not going to create the invoice. Then you have to go into a different thing to make an invoice. Here in our system, you put this information in here one time, and you can just go click on everything else you need. Need an invoice? We just created a couple invoices. It only took a few minutes. Later on here in a few minutes, I'll go show you a couple of the reports. You just click on them and they run. And all we're really doing here is entering in our load information, and it does everything else automatically for us. So let's go back and take a look at the trips list. Okay. So on the trips list, we'll see that load that we just put in. Bill Smith, driving truck 2. Okay. He's still driving truck 2. All right. And then from Akron, Ohio to Chicago, and he'll be delivering in Chicago tomorrow on the 3rd. Then we'll have John Doe delivering down in Houston that load that he's on. Then the only other driver that doesn't have anything to do is Campbell, that's me, delivering in Los Angeles, California. So we need to find something for him to do to get out of Los Angeles. So let's say we got on the broker board or whatever, and we found him a load going out of Los Angeles to maybe Phoenix, Arizona. If you guys have any good examples, man, feel free to put them in the comments or whatever. If you got a certain load that you like to do or certain load you've done before, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'll use it for an example, make it a little more interesting. So we have a truck tomorrow that's going to be in Houston, Texas. You're going to be looking for a load. So anybody has any load information out of Houston, Texas, I'll use it tomorrow. So basically what we're going to do then is we're getting out of California, so we're going to add a planned load. Now this one's not one that we're going to clone. This is one for a random customer that we're going to use. Maybe it's something we found off of the broker board. And so this customer, we've never hauled for them before. They're a brand new broker. So now we're going to enter them in. I don't know what to call them. We'll call them, we already have XYZ brokerage. So let's see, who else can we enter in here? Let's do ABC broker. How about that? Just to make something up. We'll say they're in Los Angeles, California. Okay, and then I'm just picking the state. And you can see the only things that are required are these things with these little asterisks. All this other information you can feel free to enter, but that stuff's not required. So you have all this, like I said, you can keep track of all your details in here, or you can just do it the quick way. So I'm just doing it the quick way for now, just to kind of show you how it works. Putting in fake data anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but just showing you how quick you can buzz through some of this stuff, because it really doesn't take that much time or that much effort to really keep your company on track and running smooth. So now we're going to pick this load up here in Los Angeles, California. So I'm just going to say right here in the shipper, we're going to say we picked it up right at that brokerage. ABC Broker, Los Angeles, California. And we'll say we picked that up today. Okay. And a BOL number, we'll make up a number here. Have that in there. Driver instructions could be an appointment time at 2 o'clock or any number of things, whatever the driver needs to know. Again, this information automatically will go right to his ELD app if you're using that. I had somebody in the comments ask me, what do you do if we're using the system and the driver doesn't have the Trucking Office ELD app? How do you get all this information to them? So I'll show you that in a minute. There is a way to email it right to them right from the system. And so that's been a feature we've had for a long time. The ELD thing's a little bit newer, obviously. Those just came out a couple years ago here. So now we're going to deliver to a factory in, where did we say we're going? Phoenix, Arizona? Let's say Phoenix, Arizona. Let's see. Phoenix, Arizona. And again, those are the only things that are really required. There's plenty of other information we could put in, but we're just going to try to get a city and state. We're going to go from, sometimes coming from LA clear back to Ohio isn't always the best way to go. Sometimes we take a load, from the east way out west like that. Then on the way back, sometimes you bounce around and take a few different loads. Now from Phoenix area, from LA to Phoenix, I'm not sure how many miles that is off the top of my head, but I'm going to say that's a 2 to 3 day trip. So I'm going to say we have a 3-day window to get it there. He'll probably get there in less than 3 days, probably more like a 2-day trip. Maybe even 1 day. I can't remember how many miles it is. We'll see how many miles it is in a minute when we run this. Now, if I was already booked this load, if I just booked this load from the broker, I would have all that. I would know all that offhand. But me just making stuff up, filling stuff in, I don't know off the top of my head. Primary fee, how much will we get paid from LA to Phoenix? I'm not sure, but since I'm making up pretend money, I'm just going to say $2,500. And then I'm just going to keep that in as a flat fee. I'm not even going to enter a fuel surcharge or anything. I'm just going to lump it all into a flat fee. But obviously we can break that stuff down. And then we'll save. And we save that. Again, we're in the plan load, the load planner section. That enters in as a plan load. And all we're looking at here is that's just the information we entered. That's it. System didn't do anything, didn't do any calculations, nothing happened. We're here in a load planner stage. Now we need to assign it to a trip. We need to dispatch this onto a driver and create a trip. Okay, so if we had the rate con handy, we could attach the rate con right now and it would be stored with this load information, but we're not going to worry about that at the moment. It's just an option. We'll add a trip. We add a trip. We're going to assign this one to me since I'm empty in LA. It remembers that I was driving truck 1. It knows that my last trip delivered in LA. This is the load we picked. We're going to go from Los Angeles to Phoenix just to double check. We're not going to enter any expenses or anything like that right now. We're just going to save. And as soon as we do that, then that's when the system does a whole bunch of stuff. It just sent all that load information right to my ELD app, so I'll be able to see it as an upcoming trip. I can accept that trip and check off the pickup. And as soon as I do that, it'll show that the load's in transit. In the meantime, just like that other one we looked at, here's all the driver settlement information. Here's the profit and loss on the trip. Here's the load information and the information we'll use for the invoice. Here's the mileage that it ran from PC Miler, state by state. And then here's the route I wanted to say route clarification, but basically they're just the routing details. So the system does all that. All you're doing is putting in where you're picking up, where you're delivering, putting in the amount of money you're charging the customer, and everything else just updates automatically. So we'll go back to trips, and now your trips, your dispatch screen looks a little bit differently. Back in the old days, we used to keep track of all this stuff on a whiteboard. I don't know if you've been in the business for a while, maybe you remember the dispatcher's whiteboard. They would have all the drivers' names and their truck numbers written on there. You need to erase that stuff and update it every day. But basically, you don't have to do that anymore. It's just right here. This is just going to continually update. So in the beginning of the morning, you might have some loads that are green and not very many that are yellow because you got stuff that's delivering for the day. But then by the end of the day, you should have several things in yellow, all the stuff that you're going to deliver tomorrow and the next day and, upcoming several days. Some people have loads scheduled way out, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks even. And we do have one driver on this list that's on a dedicated lane. So if I wanted to update that dedicated lane, I could put on all the loads for the whole week. Like maybe those customers gave me, 3 loads at a time or a month's worth at a time. I mean, every customer is a little bit different in how they tender those loads over to their trucking companies. But we're just going day by day here just to kind of show how to keep everything all updated and on track. Now, I do recommend that you put the loads in the system, though, as soon as you book them. And then as you're going through the trip, you can update things as they go. Like every day when you do updates, you can update your receipts, your expenses, you can do your invoice, and everything just stays right on track. So with that being said, I think we're all set. We got our trucks all dispatched for tomorrow. We have 2 that are delivering tomorrow, and 1 is delivering on the 5th. We have one here in Houston, Texas tomorrow. So if anybody has any loads coming out of Houston that we can just play with and put the information in here, go ahead and throw it in the comments. I'll use it for an example. And then in Chicago, this guy's on a dedicated lane. And Arizona, same thing. If anybody's got any good example freight coming out of Arizona, we can bounce him around the country anywhere. So we can have a little bit of fun with it. Let's go ahead, and with that being done, that's really all we wanted to do. Let's see what the reports look like today. We will jump over to the dashboard and look at the company overview report. Company overview, this report just defaults to the current year. So we're looking at everything from the current year. Now, I don't have a bunch of, we just started doing this last month, a couple weeks ago. So I don't have a lot of info, a lot of data backfilled. I don't have a lot of loads entered in the system. So it's been a 0 most of the time, but now the graph is starting to show some numbers though. What we're looking at here is revenue and expenses and profit, just like any P&L would give you. But then we're breaking down the mileage, how many miles are you running? What's your revenue per loaded mile? What's your expenses per loaded mile? Your profit per mile or your profit per loaded mile? So I think it's important to kind of break down, like I understand that you need to include all the miles when you're figuring your revenue per mile because, all the miles for the truck count, right? But when you're bidding on freight, you can include the empty miles with your deadhead when you're bidding on the freight, and that's good to do that, but the rate is based on the amount of loaded miles. What your customer is looking at is from point A to point B, how much is it costing me to get my freight moved from point A to point B? So it's important to understand kind of where you're at. That's the real number you're competing with other trucking companies. But it's some cool stats. It gives you your overall miles, your average miles per load. And so when you're trying to make decisions on, well, geez, how do I become more profitable? How do I raise revenues and or reduce expenses? These are the numbers you need to kind of make those decisions. Should you run longer loads or shorter loads, or what would it take to kind of get your numbers kind of looking better? And also, how do the numbers change month over month and year over year? How do your numbers now compare to what they were 6 months ago? I mean, 6 months ago, it's 2020 right now. So 6 months ago, we had the big pandemic shutdown and, everybody's numbers were looking pretty bad. So most people, their numbers right now are probably looking a lot better than they were 6 months ago. But you got to know those things. And when your numbers, now there will be another slow time. So next time we go into a slow time, you should be able to see those numbers going down and understand what's going on. So really important tool to be able to manage your business well. Okay. So really, that's all I want to look at today. There are a lot of other reports here, and we'll kind of dive into some of them as we go. But I just wanted to jump on here, do a quick update. We'll enter in a couple loads. Tomorrow, we'll jump on here again, and we'll update our trucks again. We'll take a look at some reports. And when you guys have questions, throw them in the comments, and I will be happy to answer them on the next session. If you're already using the software and you're on a free trial right now, I'd really encourage you to put in a couple of loads of your own and start getting your account set up and, see how it's going to work for you. The first couple ones you put in there and see kind of how it works. It takes a little bit to kind of get used to the system, but once you start putting loads in, you'll be buzzing through it in no time. It really is just as easy as what I'm showing you here, and it really will give you a lot of benefits. if you're not using the software yet, maybe you're just catching this video randomly somewhere, we offer a 30-day free trial. We don't, not one of those companies that gets a credit card up front or any of those kind of things. We like to earn your business. So try it before you buy it. Get on the free trial. We'll send you out some email trainings. You'll get emails with examples of how to do exactly how to set up your account, exactly what to do first, exactly what to do second. You can jump on here with me every day. I'll show examples of how to put loads into systems and how to keep things going. But the free trial really is a good deal. You get a lot of use out of it. So go to truckingoffice.com, hit the free trial button, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks.